Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Succeeding in the Workplace webinar. This webinar is part of the Career Ready by Mohawk Alumni Spring Series. My name is Lynn Mattis, and I'm an alumni coordinator at Mohawk College. I'm so glad you are able to join us today and look forward to learning alongside all of you in today's session. Now, I know we have a lot of great material to cover today, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce our presenter, Hassan Eldib. Hassan is the International Student Career Advisor at Mohawk College with over 13 years of experience in the career advising field. He is passionate about career coaching with a genuine interest in developing a strategic plan to assist students in achieving their career goals. Hassan, thank you so much for being here. Why don't we go ahead and get started?
Thank you so much, Lynn, for having me. I appreciate it. Hello, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well. So today we are going to be talking about succeeding at the workplace, right? So assuming that you have job searched well, you have interviewed well, and now you've got the job. How do you actually excel at the job? How do you adapt to the work culture? And how do you create a career for yourself right off the bat? So before we get into it, I know there may be a few new people from last time I was doing this. So I'll just go through who we are really quickly, just in case you were hoping to book an appointment and kind of working one-on-one with some career advisors. So we are student and graduate employment. We are the Career Center at Mohawk College. That means we help you with anything career related. I am the International Student Career Advisor, so I can help you specifically with any barriers to employment that may relate to your overseas experience or overseas education. But obviously I work with domestic students as well. We're still available Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4:30 p.m. Just as we were on campus. So that means we can meet with you via email, phone, or Zoom. The majority of our appointments are via Zoom. So if you are interested, please book an appointment with us, and I'll talk about that in just a sec. So in terms of these appointments that you can book with us, some of the things that we can work on are obviously your resume, cover letter, e-portfolio if you need it, preparing for interviews that are coming up, or just preparing in general, networking strategies, job search approaches, and more importantly, consultation. What that means really is that we will help you with any career related issue. I don't want you to think of us as, just resume writers or, cover letter writers. We are career advisors. So we will help you with any career related decision, kind of create a plan for you and hope you get your career started on the right path. In terms of who we are, so it's myself, Sherry Wade, and Youth Yogalam. So in terms of booking an appointment, it is careerready.mohawkcollege.ca. And I strongly recommend you bookmark this link, careerready.mohawkcollege.ca. That's where you would sign in with your MyMohawk username and password, and you would be able to book an appointment with us on there. Now, keep in mind, you will receive this Prezi to your email, to your Mohawk email. So all these links will be accessible. Okay, so let's talk about succeeding at the workplace. When I graduated university, I was pretty young. I was in my early 20s, and I didn't really have enough experience in the workforce that allowed me to understand how to adapt to cultures and work cultures and understand what's required from me as a new employee. I worked entry-level jobs, customer service, even security, and those positions, they required some sort of adaptation to work culture, but it wouldn't be as intense as it would be on a professional level. So let's talk about the first couple of steps. So starting your engine, right? So how to work well in Canada, understanding your workplace culture, setting the stage for success, and projecting a professional image. I think these are important things, whether you're domestic or obviously an international student, just because, different work cultures exist even in Canada. So for international students, it's one thing to adapt to the Canadian culture, but now you have to figure out different ways to adapt to different work cultures in the country. Okay, so let's look at the first one. Canadian work culture. when you go into a workplace, if you're an international student or a domestic student, but more specifically international students, the work culture or the Canadian work culture can be clear, right? So you're talking about food, different facial expressions, the music, the literature, how people dress. That's all visual. That sometimes is easy to understand and sort of try to adapt to. But just like the iceberg sort of is trying to illustrate, there are a lot of different things that are underneath the surface that you have to fully understand as well, right? So what are the norms of the Canadian work culture? What are the gender roles? Nature of friendship in the workplace? Different beliefs, religious beliefs, political beliefs, are they, is that part of the conversation at the workplace? Their values, different goals and climbing the corporate ladder. What does that look like? Do you step on people's toes to get to where you want to be? There's a lot of things that you have to be aware of and fully understand. And I was hoping to have this illustration to kind of give you an idea of how many different things that can be included in the Canadian work culture that you're not aware of, that you need to be aware of. So learning about your workplace culture. Every workplace culture has a different style. So these are the four main ones that you should be aware of. So we have the clan culture, the market culture, the adocracy culture, and the hierarchy culture. And I'll talk about each in depth. But these are the cultures that you should have in mind before getting into, even before your first day of work, just to have an idea of what to expect. What kind of workplace is this in order for me to adapt well? If I don't know what kind of work culture this is, it's going to be hard for me to adapt. So these cultures. So the first one we'll talk about is the clan culture. So usually that's a collaborative culture, and hence the name, the clan, right? The leader type is usually a mentor. They're a team builder. They're very welcoming in terms of, collaboration. And what drives this culture is commitment, communication, and development. Now, theory of effectiveness. Why does this work? To some people, for some people, it's that human development and participation produce effectiveness, right? So the more input there is, the better the outcome will be, right? So that's the theory behind the clan culture. Let's look at the adocracy. So adocracy is more of a creative type of culture, right? The leader type is usually an innovator, visionary, an entrepreneur. Value drivers, so what drives this theory? Innovative outputs, transformation, agility, right? So it's being able to sort of transform and evolve with whatever is happening in the industry, right? So it's the creative part of it. And the theory of effectiveness, why does it work? It's vision, innovation, and new resources produce effectiveness, right? So understanding your surroundings, understanding your market, and moving along with it in order for you to achieve whatever goals there are for that specific organization or company. Hierarchy, that's the controlling work culture, right? The leader type is usually a coordinator, a monitor, an organizer. And what drives this culture? It's efficiency, timeliness, consistency, uniformity. So, different types of organizations require that. They can't be the creative type. They can't be the collaborative type, right? So one example would be a hospital. We can't really be as creative as we want to be in a hospital if you were in the medical field. You have to have efficiency. You have to have timeliness. Mohawk College, to some degree, is a combination of a couple of these, but more, I would say, in the hierarchy, right? Just because we have to be efficient, we have to be timely in terms of what we offer to students in order for our students to receive value. So theory of effectiveness, how is this effective? Control and efficiency with capable processes produce effectiveness. So we're limiting the amount of mistakes, errors that take place, right? It's a well-oiled machine. That is the idea that you should think of when you're looking at hierarchy. And finally, the market culture. Usually that's a competing culture, right? It's, sales, well, mostly sales, whether it's business to business or just regular, retail sales. The leader type is usually a competitor, a producer, a hard driver. What drives this culture is the profitability. It's money. That's what drives this culture. So it's about producing, and it's about achieving specific set goals. And the theory behind it, why it would work for some organizations, it's aggressively competing and customer focus produce effectiveness, right? It's the competition. There are going to be, 100 different companies that may produce or do something similar to you. So it's always competing, it's always competition in order to be profitable. So those are the 4 cultures that you should be aware of and fully understand before you go into your industry. Now, how do you prepare yourself for success? That's one of the first questions that you should ask yourself before your first day. Okay. How do I get in there and make sure that I'm making an impact without stepping on people's toes? Right? That's the idea. So learn what your management wants from you. This is huge, right? When I was first hired at Mohawk College, I had a really important conversation with my manager at the time, and it was in the first week. It was about expectations. It's about what is expected from me in the next 30 days. And these were questions that I was asking. Okay. I was asking these questions in order for me to gain confidence in terms of what I do at work and build on that to produce the expected sort of outcomes. So how do you evaluate job performance is one question that you can ask, right? In one of your first meetings. Well, you need to know how they evaluate job performance because you want to do well. So if they're evaluating job performance and you're focusing, or if they're evaluating job performance in one way and you're focusing on something totally different, that's still applicable to your job, but it's not what they evaluate you on, then you might want to, reevaluate your strategy. What are your objectives for me the next 30 days? That's such an important question. The next 30 days, what are my objectives? What should I be focusing on? Because a lot of times when you get into a company, depending on the organization, sometimes in the first 30 days, it's slow. They might not have a lot going on for you. You might have to take initiative and do things. So that's why clearing the air in that sense and making sure you understand what's expected from you is going to be really important. How often should I report on my progress, right? And that's going to depend on the management style that you have, which I'll talk about in just a bit. But how often should I report on my progress? Do you need to know, on a weekly basis what I'm up to, daily basis, monthly basis, right? These are things that are important because you are creating a channel of communication between you and your supervisor, manager, whoever you're reporting to. And that's going to be an important channel, communication wise, because it's going to allow you to ask questions and it's going to allow you to receive feedback. Who do you recommend that I meet with in the company during the first 30 days? Another crucial question. Some managers, even though they're trying their best, they might not be aware how beneficial this will be for you. Again, and I base this on my experiences at Mohawk and other organizations. At Mohawk, my manager was kind enough to set up meetings with about 35 individuals at the college from different departments that he thought would benefit to know what I'm going to be up to, and for me to understand what they do for referral purposes, just to engage with other people at the college and feel as part of the team, part of the organization. I think that's really a healthy way to start your employment. So ask, who should I be meeting with in the first 30 days? That's an important one. So day one, what should you be doing? So let's go through the basics. Understand the dress code and wear appropriate clothes. I think that's important. That's probably one of the first questions you want to ask when you're offered a job. Maybe that's something that's been discussed, but you do want to know what the dress code is. Arrive at least 15 minutes early. If you are on time, you are late. That is my favorite saying, and I truly believe in it. And I think if you engage with your career in that sense, where you're always ready, you're always early, you're going to be successful, right? Because you're always going to show initiatives, you're always going to show energy when you do that. So if you got to be there at 9 and you show up at 9, that's not a good thing, right? At least for the first few months or a year, maybe, right? Just be there a little early, show initiative, show excitement. Find company resources. Now, hopefully those are provided to you, but if they're not, take initiative and find those resources, right? Ask for company resources in terms of their policies on different things. Understand your rights and understand your ability to kind of take days off, and when you can take them off. And all these things are really going to be important for you to understand as part of their policies. Meet people and learn their names. This one was always a hard thing for me. I'm terrible at learning names. If I see you once, I'll remember you forever. But your name, sometimes that's hard for me to remember, especially working at a college when there are many, many different colleagues. Sometimes it's difficult, but that is something that you have to work on, just like I did. And you have to learn people's names. I think that's key to building professional, healthy relationships with your colleagues. And take initiative, right? So that's day one stuff. Take initiative in terms of like, hey, if there's nothing coming my way, go talk to your supervisor. Hey, what would you like me to get started on? Did you want me to do this? Did you want me to do that? Show excitement at work. Your professional image. This is an important one as well, because if you're coming like I did, if you're coming from entry-level work, and you're used to wearing a uniform or maybe jeans to work or whatever the case may be, professional image wasn't really a top priority, right? It was just, let me just get to work, let me complete my tasks, and I'm going to punch out and I'm going to leave. But now in your career, professional image goes a long way, especially the dress code. So here's a sample of what it means for somebody to tell you it's business casual. The dress code is business casual or business. Because a lot of times I do get questions from students who ask me, hey, I was told it was business, the dress code, but what does that look like? I have no idea. So this is just a sample. Obviously, if you talk to different people, they'll give you different styles to what a business should look like, but these are the safe ones. These are the ones that we know are accurate, right? It's much more clear for men than women, just because with women is obviously different ways to dress business and business casual. But again, this is just a sample for you to look at and get an idea of what that looks like. Grooming. I won't spend too much time about grooming, but it is something that you should be aware of. Again, based on where you're coming from, your previous job, maybe that stuff didn't matter. Maybe you were in construction and like, really, my hair, I don't really care about my hair. I'm just going in there to do my work. Well, now it's a whole different situation. You need to be able to project a professional image, not just with the dress code, but obviously with grooming, whether it's breath, body odor, feet, nails, dandruff, and hair. Now, I skip perfumes on purpose because I do want to talk a little bit about it. I come from the Middle East, and one of the things that you do from when you come from the Middle East is that if you're walking out of the house, you're putting cologne on, you're putting perfume on. That is just something that's part of the culture, I guess. But you'll come to quickly learn that that is not okay to do at your workplace. You don't want to walk in with your favorite cologne on, perfume on, because some people can be sensitive to that. Ideally, you want to stay away from that. Obviously, on the weekend, you can do whatever you want. But in terms of a workplace, you want to stay away from any strong smells, whether it's aftershave or lotions or perfumes that may bother other colleagues. Okay, so let's shift into first gear. Actions speak louder than words. Business talk on the job, telephone tips, and writing emails. Let's talk about those topics. So body language. So your body language is a big part of, your personality, right? So you have to be aware of how your body language represents you as a professional. You have to be aware of personal space. So depending on who you are as an individual, and sometimes, all of these are, they could be totally normal in different cultures and in different parts of the world, but we're just talking about Canadian work culture. So personal space, you want to give people personal space, especially, if you're getting too close to them, or maybe just scooting your chair over a little too close to the person you're talking to. So that is something to be aware of. People enjoy their personal space, and always try to give personal space to people when speaking with them, or even when you're near them. Touching. So that's something that you have to be aware of as well. You can't go into work and shake people's hands every time you see them every day. You can't be hugging people every time you see them, or touch them on the shoulder to speak with them. That is not something that you want to start doing, right? So be aware of the touching. Facial expressions. Now, this is something that's common. And sometimes I do that myself, I realized early in my career, but imagine you are in a meeting with like 15 other people, and somebody says something that you either disagree with, find humorous, or brings out any specific emotion out of you. So sometimes you might make a facial expression that could put some people off, right? So if you disagree with somebody and somebody says something and you disagree with it, and you just kind of frown a little bit and say, what, and do that, well, that's not really appropriate to do in a meeting. I think there's better ways to discuss something that you disagree with, other than facial expressions, because that seems a little passive aggressive, and it's not really appropriate in a professional place. So be aware of your facial expressions. So if you are the type to have strong facial expressions, you have to be aware of those and work on, having less facial expressions that could be misinterpreted. Obviously, we all have facial expressions, but there are certain ways that your facial expressions can be misinterpreted, especially in meetings or chats with colleagues and students or customers, depending on where you work. Eye contact, I think that's really important to understand as well. When you're talking with somebody, speaking with somebody, eye contact is a big part of the human interaction when you're speaking with somebody. And it shows interest in what they're saying. So if somebody's talking to me and I'm just looking the other way, or if I'm looking at my shoes, or I'm typing away on my computer as they're talking to me, it shows this interest, it shows disrespect, and the human interaction is sort of lost there. And it also diminishes your opportunity to build relationships with your colleagues. So it's important to have eye contact and understand how much of an impact it has when you're speaking with people. Posture, when you're in your office, I guess posture is not a big deal, but when you're in meetings, when you're talking to customers, clients, colleagues or managers, posture goes a long way, right? So sitting up straight and really having that professional image showcased every time you're meeting with somebody is a great way to start your career, right? You don't want to be known as the guy who just seems like they don't care. They're just slouching around, and it's just, their body language doesn't paint them as somebody who's interested in where they are, right? So posture is important. And obviously that includes sitting up straight as well. Canadian conversation patterns. So if you're an international student, it's one thing to understand the language, right? So understanding common words and sentences and how to reply and all that good stuff. But a lot of the times there are conversation patterns that you have no idea how to react to it or how to engage in, or even what it means. So the straightforward ones are what's up, how's it going, what's new, how are you, how was your weekend? Those are pretty straightforward, right? However, if that is asked and you're kind of wondering how to reply, It's very simple. It's exactly what it sounds like, right? So what's up? How's it going? It means how are you? That's really what it comes down to. How was your weekend? It's an opportunity for you to share a little bit of information about how your weekend was with colleagues and all of that. So one of the more complex ones, or ones that you might not have heard, is, there's quite a few of them, but one of them would be something like, hitting two birds with one stone, right? So if somebody says, "Oh, we can hit two birds with one stone" in that situation. So if somebody says that and you're not really aware what it means, please ask, right? Ask your colleagues, understand these conversation patterns that could be sort of unique to your vocabulary. So, but by the way, that means that you're solving two problems with one solution, right? Hitting two birds with one stone, solving two problems with one solution. That's what it means. And that's just an example of things that you should be aware of in the workplace, and always ask questions. Paying attention and listening when you're having a conversation with people is so important. I can tell you, numerous times in my career where I had colleagues where they just, I don't know if it was part of their personality or maybe they were disinterested, but they seemed disinterested when you were talking to them, right? So whether they seem like they weren't paying attention or listening, or doing something on the side or looking away, or it's just it really does not help you to create that professional image and build that relationship with colleagues. So paying attention and listening to people, listening is so key when you're working with others. It's not all about you. It's, a lot of times it's about other people, and you have to listen fully before you can have a proper conversation and offer solutions if need be. Small talk, and that goes back to how was your weekend? Every Monday, expect your colleagues to ask you, how was your weekend, right? Or on Friday, hey, what do you have planned this weekend, right? It's part of it. And you have to be comfortable with that, or you have to at least get comfortable talking about that. You're going to find yourself, doing a lot of small talk about the weather, about your kids, your pets, whoever is involved in your life, and it's important to kind of be able to engage with colleagues about that stuff. You can't just walk away and not seem interested in things like that. You have to engage. Telephone manners. So, part of my job, I talk to students on a daily basis on the phone, and a lot of them can be international students, and domestic and international students tend to do the same. It's not just specifically unique to international students, but a lot of times people will call me and they won't tell me who they are. They'll just start talking. Hey, Hussam, I was hoping you can help me with this, and that. Well, introduce yourself, right? Let me know who you are. I don't know everybody at the college. I don't know every single student at the college. So introduce yourself so I know who you are, to sort of help me remember if we've met before or how I can help. So always identify yourself at the beginning of all calls. Be sensitive to the tone of your voice. Sometimes, again, just part of personality, the tone of voice can be a bit aggressive when it's not meant to be aggressive. So you have to be aware of that when you're on the phone, to sound, as courteous as possible and as professional as possible. Think through exactly what you plan to say and discuss before you place a call. Again, I have lots of students who sometimes call me and they want to talk about something, but they're just all over the place and they can't remember certain things that they wanted to talk to me about. And they're telling me a story that isn't really identifying what they want me to help them with. So really kind of organize your thoughts, know exactly what you want to talk about, and make sure that you're straight to the point with your conversation, especially with colleagues or clients, depending on who you're working with. Do not allow interruptions to occur during conversation. So, there's nothing worse than talking with somebody and then, you're about to say something really, really important. And then they say, oh, hold on 1 sec. Let me just, and then they're talking to somebody in the background, right? That's not the best way to conversate with either a client or a supervisor or a manager or whomever you're speaking with. So try your best to always be ready to speak without interruptions. Now, if you're leaving a voicemail, it's so important to speak clearly and slowly. right? Especially if you're an international student with an accent. I know my parents have accents, and sometimes, when they speak English and leave a voicemail, it's sometimes it's hard to decipher exactly what they're saying. So if you feel that that might be the case in with you, make sure that you're going the extra mile by speaking very clearly and slowly when leaving a message and identifying yourself in those messages as well. And with domestic students and international students, make sure you leave your name and a way to contact you, just to make sure that you get contacted appropriately. Efficient emails. So part of the conversation at work will happen via email. In fact, it happens more via email than phone, especially with colleagues. So if you're the type that is an over communicator, and I know people in my personal life who are over communicators, right? They'll send an email that is 3 paragraphs long, but they could have said what they wanted to say in about 4 sentences. So that is key to you being a good communicator via email, right? Make sure that you're hitting all the points that you want to hit in the email without over explaining, or, if the conversation requires a thorough sort of in-depth explanation, pick up the phone and call that individual. In my experiences, there's nothing worse than getting an email that's 6 paragraphs long and you got to go through it and they're expecting a reply. So now you got to copy and paste that email, put it in Word document, try to highlight every point that you want to reply to. It becomes time consuming, right? So if you feel like it should be a phone conversation, pick up the phone and call them. Be polite in the email. I think that that's also an issue with a lot of students where, and I know they're not trying to be rude or aggressive, but the tone of the email sounds a bit aggressive, right? So for example, sometimes I'll get an email where the student will say, Hussam, do my resume, thanks, right? And it's just a sort of, it's not really aggressive, but there isn't really any politeness with that email. There isn't really a professional sense to that email. You have to be as professional as possible, right? With a hello, can you please do something? So these things are always important and kind of improves your tone in emails. And also proofread your emails. Even emails, you have to proofread them, especially in the first few months at work. There's nothing worse than sending an email to 20 people and it's riddled with mistakes. It's embarrassing, right? And it happens to the best of us, right? You misspell something or you forget a word. So make sure you proofread it and you're sending out professional emails. Again, this is part of your professional image at work, okay? So everything that you do is part of your professional image. And proofreading your emails is a key part. Okay, so shifting into second gear, getting along with coworkers and understanding what your role is if you are in a leadership role, understanding your management style. So let's say that you end up getting a role in management or any leadership role, or even maybe deeper in your career, you end up getting a leadership role. You have to understand what kind of management style you possess or which one you want to develop. So getting along with workers. Respect your colleagues. That is really the best advice I can give you. There's nothing worse than showing disrespect to colleagues or belittling colleagues or doing any of that. It's important to make sure that you understand that you will get treated as you treat others, right? So make sure you treat others with respect. Steer clear of cringeworthy topics. Nobody wants to talk about politics as much as me, but I never talk about it at work because that is not an appropriate topic. Religion, sensitive things that I won't go into, but you don't want to talk about that stuff because it creates division, right, within the work environment, and you don't want that. Get your workplace relationships off to a good start, meaning, talk to as many people as possible, have a positive attitude when you're talking with people. That's how you get along with people, is just being a positive person and always being there to help if they need assistance. Find a way to get along with even the most difficult people. And I will tell you, you will always have difficult people to work with, right? It just happens. And by difficult, I mean individuals who are, uh, sometimes difficult to approach. For example, they're not easy to approach to talk or to give advice to or to get feedback. And that is an issue, right? So you have to find a way to get along with these individuals. And the best advice for that is communication. You have to be able to communicate effectively with that individual. So you have to find that balance of being professional, polite, sincere, while sort of getting to the point in terms of what you want to say, right? And that's key, right? I remember, back in the day, I worked in an organization where there was an individual who was really hard to get along with. I mean, it was hard to speak with them. They were hard to approach, to speak with, and one day I found out that I'm not going to identify the specific thing that we both had in common, enjoyed, but we both really enjoyed something that that we both had in common. I didn't know. And I, approached this individual and talked to him about it and said, oh, I heard you, you like this, and that, and I do too. And we started a conversation and it kind of built and improved a little bit, right? And, every time we saw each other, we kind of, joked about that specific topic and kind of built on that. So little things like that go a long way when you can identify common ground with difficult people. And I hate to use the word difficult people, but that's just the best way to describe the individual that you want to get along with. Don't spread malicious gossip. That's clear. I don't think I need to elaborate on that. I mean, even if somebody comes with gossip to you, I think you want to try your best not to engage and be included in that kind of thing. It becomes a toxic environment. And depending on the situation, you could even end up being the wrongdoer in that situation. So be aware of that. Practice good office etiquette. That's important. And what I mean by that, I'll give you an example of good office etiquette. And it's very small, very simple, even silly, but it shows how little things go a long way. In my office at Mohawk College, we have sort of a common area where we have a Keurig machine. And the Keurig machine, if you don't know, it's one of those coffee machines that you open up and then you put a pot in there and you close it. You pour water on the left side and then you press the button and then you get coffee. And that's how it works. So I realized that for the first or for a week or so since we got the Keurig machine, I never took out my pod when it was done and I never filled the water. Other people were always doing that. And I was just leaving my stuff there. People were taking my pot and putting it in the garbage and people were filling the water so others can actually use it. And, looking back, I'm like, why wasn't I doing that? It's just little things that go a long way in office etiquette, right? If you borrow something from somebody, you return it. If it's, if somebody emails you and they're expecting a reply, do it quickly depending on what they're asking in the email. That is office etiquette, right? So little things like that go a long way, and you'll recognize them when you're in the office. And finally, be kind to your coworkers. I mean, that trumps respect, that trumps everything. That is just kind of the overall sort of mission here, is to be kind. I think the way I approached work, the way I approach colleagues, even personal life, if you start with kindness, nothing but good will happen. That's really the message here, is that especially at work, when you show kindness, everything else will fall into place. So keep that in mind if things get complicated in terms of what decision you have to take in a certain situation, kindness will always win, right? So think about that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to share a video with you about management style. It's about autocratic, democratic, and laissez-faire, and it's about a 3-minute video. And let me just make sure that I do this correctly in terms of the audio. So I'm going to play this.
So I have a question for you. Would you say that you're a more autocratic leader?
And whoops, could you guys hear that when I turned it on? Can somebody give me a thumbs up or a thumb down? Thumbs up. Okay, you guys heard it. Perfect. Okay, so I'll play it again.
So I have a question for you. Would you say that you're a more autocratic leader or a democratic leader? Better yet, what do you think the people around you would say about your leadership style? Because that's really what ends up mattering in the end, how people follow you. So we're going to look at each of these styles, and we'll look a little bit at the laissez-faire style of leadership in this video. Let's unpack it. Hello again, friends. Alex Lyon here, and this channel Communication Coach is here to help rising leaders like you increase your personal impact so you can lead the people around you to higher and higher levels of excellence. And a big part of that is your leadership style, how you come across, how people perceive you. We're going to look at two of the main leadership styles today. The first one is the autocratic leadership style. This is a little bit old school. It's the typical boss-centered approach to leadership, where the boss has a centralized approach to making decisions. He or she tells people what to do and expects them to follow. Typically, there's a high power distance between the boss and the other people. In other words, there's not a lot of intermingling and talking and socializing. There's a clear separation in rank. Now, this leadership style can work, and it is an appropriate, legitimate style of leadership. However, there are some strengths and some weaknesses. I would say the biggest strength is that when you're there and things need to be done and you're in control, things will generally get done. When you're telling people what to do and you're watching them, they will often follow through. On the downside, as soon as you leave the room, if you're normally being very autocratic and authoritarian, you leave the room, people will tend to stop working as hard because you're not there to watch them really closely. In my experience, new leaders tend to default to this autocratic style of leadership. So they get nervous, they have a new level of responsibility, and in that moment of anxiety, they snap into a more autocratic approach. So this is not necessarily one that I personally use. So let's talk about the second one. That's the democratic style of leadership. This is the one that I prefer. This democratic style has a two heads are better than one philosophy. In other words, you're thinking more about the group. It's not boss-centered. A democratic leader will tend to talk to his or her people quite a bit, gather feedback about possible decisions, and see where people stand on an issue. It does not mean, however, that the democratic leader completely hands over power and responsibility. The democratic leader still may make all the decisions, but he or she does so with input from everybody. And then when the projects are delegated and the decisions are handed out, people can see themselves in those decisions. They feel a little bit of ownership. And the other benefit here is that when the democratic leader leaves the room, people will generally continue to work really hard. They might not even notice that the democratic leader isn't there because they already feel like they're part of those decisions and they have ownership over those projects. The third style of leadership, which is not really one we're going to focus on, is the laissez-faire style of leadership. And a lot of times people think this means the lazy leader, but it doesn't. It just means hands off. That's French for hands off. And sometimes this leadership approach is actually perfectly fine. For example, if you have really highly motivated, highly educated experts and you've hired all the right people, you shouldn't have to watch them very carefully. For example, if you're running a hospital and you've hired all the right surgeons, I hope that you don't have to go in there to your surgeons and say, okay, do a great surgery today. You could do it. Come on, get fired up. Hopefully your surgeons are already up to speed and excited about doing a good job, and you don't have to. So you can take a hands-off approach with some people in terms of your leadership approach. So those are the two main styles: autocratic, democratic. Then we talked a little bit about laissez-faire. Question of the day: what's your style of leadership? And better yet, what do you think the people around you think about your style of leadership? I would love to hear your comments in that section below. So thanks, God bless, and I will see you in the next video.
Okay, so let me move on to the next slide. So before we move on to the next slide, just make sure that, if you end up being in a leadership role, that you understand your style or what style you want to develop, the strength, weaknesses of that style within that industry, within that team that you have. A lot of times, depending on the team, you might have to switch styles. So that is just kind of an introduction to the leadership styles that you might end up in as a new employee. Okay, So we'll go through the last few fairly quickly, just because we're running short on time, just to have to be able to have a conversation about any questions that you might have. So shifting into third gear, so managing your time and being productive, and as well do's and don'ts in meetings. So time management. In order to manage your time correctly, you have to understand your goals. You can't manage your time if you don't understand what goals you have. So you have to prioritize wisely, plan ahead using different tools, whether it's calendars, whether it's specific apps on your phone, Outlook. There's different ways to sort of stay organized and manage your time well. Eliminate distractions, delegate more often if you're in a leadership role. Even with coworkers, if you guys have an understanding that you can delegate certain work to each other based on your workload, that could be efficient as well. So make sure you understand how to delegate and take care of yourself. I don't think you can manage time well without taking care of yourself as an individual, as a professional, at home and at work. That means taking the amount of time that you need off just to kind of, recharge and being able to produce as you need to. So the do's and don'ts of meetings, obviously, I'm not going to go through all of these, but these are going to be really important for you to review once you get this Prezi. So for example, the do, review the meeting agenda and be sure you understand the objectives and goals of the meeting. That's always going to prepare you to have some input and to contribute to the meeting. And that's going to showcase your abilities even better. Don't show up late and then disrupt the meeting with your arrival. That's pretty straightforward. So and it goes back to, if you're on time, you're late kind of mantra. So make sure that you follow these and you understand the do's and don'ts of meeting, because they might be a big part of your career. Okay. So shifting into fourth gear, so taking responsibility for your own career, understanding the Canadian workplace culture, improve your English communication skills, network and build relationships, and have a positive attitude and good work ethic. These are just some things you need to be aware of when you're starting your new job, right? Take responsibility of your career. Nobody has control of your career. So your decisions are going to make your career on whether you're moving from one job to the next, whether you're going to apply to a job within the same organization, whether you want to have a sort of an equal move to another position in the organization. Nobody is going to know better than you in terms of what works best, right? So take responsibility of your own career. Nobody else is responsible. Understanding Canadian work culture, I think that's key. Obviously, that's what we've been talking about today. And understand your culture once you get in it as well. There's a Canadian work culture and then the specific company work cultures that you have to be aware of, as we mentioned. Improve your English communication skills. So if you are an international student, keep building on that communication. It's commended that you have a second, maybe third language, and that's going to be useful in different workplaces. But the English language needs to be, on a higher level when you're in the workplace. Network and build relationships, even at work. Make sure you're building as many relationships, positive relationships as possible. That's going to create a professional image. That's going to help you grow within the company, and that's going to help you have a happy work life. Going to work and enjoying people that you work with because you built proper relationships, and have a positive attitude and work ethic. I can tell you people I worked with in the past who never had a positive attitude about why they were there, always complain about different things, and their work ethic wasn't there. And that's going to be clear to others at work, I promise you. So make sure that you're always there with a positive attitude, happy to be there with a strong work ethic. And that's going to help you sort of, catapult your career into the next stage. Okay. So here we have an opportunity to ask some questions, and I know Lynn might have some questions for me, but obviously we'll take questions from the students as well.
Great, thank you so much, Assam. There's so much great information that you just covered about learning a new work culture and being successful in transitioning to a new role. I love your suggestion of asking your manager questions about expectations in your first day, setting up meetings to get to know your colleagues, and finding those commonalities. So we are at the top of the hour, so we'll go ahead and wrap up. So thank you so much, Hussam. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to share your insights with us. I know I personally learned a lot. And as mentioned earlier, Hassam's presentation will be emailed to you with the recording, so you're able to reference these best practices. Wanted to quickly mention, Mohawk Alumni hosts a number of events throughout the year, such as trivia nights, personal development webinars, family-friendly events, networking, virtual career workshops such as these, and lots more. You can find all event details at the website, mohawkcollege.ca/alumni events, or you can follow us on social media at Mohawk Alumni. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today and for all your great questions. Thank you for staying connected with Mohawk as well. I hope you have a great rest of your day and are able to enjoy some sunshine. So thank you so much again and take good care.
Thank you, Lynn.